How's it going, everyone? I'm going to talk today about the minor pentatonic scale and how I use it to write guitar parts. This is going to be part one of two videos about writing guitar parts. The first is going to be covering the minor pentatonic scale. That's this video. And then the next one I'm going to be talking about is the cage system. I'm going to talk about how I use the minor pentatonic scale to write guitar parts, and it seriously sounds way more complicated than it is, so it's actually extremely easy. Before I go into that though, I want to talk about some production guidelines. The first thing is ask yourself why you're writing the guitar part. What definite purpose is your guitar part doing for your production? And here's a couple reasons why you might want to write a guitar part. First, you might want to write a guitar part because you've written a piano part and you decided to pan the piano part right, and you need to pan something left. And so to balance out your mix, you're going to write a guitar part. That's one reason. Maybe you want to write like a jangly guitar part for your chorus, and so that way your chorus feels like it lifts. And so you're playing in the higher octave ranges. Maybe you're writing a rock song. In that case, you're going to need several guitar parts. But even in those cases, you're going to want to know what each guitar part is doing. What purpose is each guitar part serving? Maybe you're just writing an instrumental hook or a lead. Maybe you're writing a counter melody to your vocal melody. These are all good reasons to write a guitar part. Try not to write something just for the sake of writing it. Try to think about what is it doing for my production. So that's the first thing. What's your guitar part doing and what purpose is it serving? And then once you answer that question, what purpose is serving, ask yourself, what kind of guitar part should I write? Do I want it to be percussive, like? Do I want it to be melodic, like? So, first production tip is, do I need a guitar part? What is the guitar part going to be doing for my production? And what type of guitar part is needed? The second production guideline I'm going to give you is don't compete with a vocal. Don't write a guitar part that competes with a vocal in general. Don't have anything in your mix that's really competing with a vocal. Now, what does competing with a vocal mean? Well, what you should do is just be a passive listener. Be like just a music lover and focus on the vocal, because that's usually what people focus on anyway. And if you find yourself listening to your music, listening to the vocal, and then getting distracted by another part, you should probably address that. Now, I'm not talking about parts that are in between vocals or in vocal gaps, for example. So maybe you have a verse and you have a vocal gap. That is, you have one melodic phrase of the verse going in the vocal, and then there's like a pause, and then the vocal starts up again. And you might have like a little lick in the middle of that. That's cool to have guitar parts in there. Just try not to write a guitar part that competes while the singer is singing. Again, listen to your music, and if your attention is focused away from the vocal onto something else like a guitar part or anything else, you should probably address that. In general, it's a good rule of thumb. Now, what are some ways that a guitar part or something could compete with a vocal? These are some things to pay attention to. First is your guitar part in the same octave range. Maybe your vocal is around like, that range. Now, if you write a guitar part in this range, the range that your vocal's in, then you might have some problem. Just check to see if your guitar part's in the same octave range as your vocal. If it is, maybe just change the part an octave up or an octave down. The problem. Another reason is that your guitar melody is too complex. A lot of the times when you have a repetitive guitar part, your brain picks up on the pattern, so it starts to just ignore the guitar part, and that way it could focus on the vocal melody. But if you have too much movement in your guitar melody while your vocal melody is going, then that will cause some distraction. It'll cause the listener to be confused about, well, whether should I be listening to the guitar part, should I be listening to the vocal part? And one of the rules as a producer and a mixing engineer is to basically tell the listener what the important part of the song is at a particular time. If it's the vocal, then your production should reflect that the vocal is the important part, not the guitar part. So those are the two production guidelines I wanted to get across before I talk about guitar parts. The first is a guitar part needed? What is the guitar part going to be doing? And what type of guitar part do you want to do? And the second guideline is don't compete with a vocal. Okay, so now we're going to look at the minor pentatonic scale. And the pentatonic scale is a 5-note scale. Penta is 5, tonic is tones, pentatonic 5 tones or 5 notes. Now we're going to be looking specifically at the first position of the pentatonic scale. Now just like any guitar scale, there's lots of different places where you could play it along the neck, but we're going to be looking at just one position today. And the way that you find the first pattern is you look for the root note on the E string, the low E string. So if my song was in A minor, I'm going to look for the A note along the low E string, and that's going to be the 5th fret. Okay? So let's look at the minor pentatonic scale of A minor. So we start on the root note, which is A, and that's the 5th fret of the low E string. Then we go to the minor 3rd, which is the 8th fret of the low E string, and that's C. Then we go to the A string and find D, which is the 5th fret. That's the 4th of A. Then we go to the 5th of A, which is E, and that's the 7th fret of the A string. Then we go up to the D string and go to the 5th fret. That's G, which is the 7th in the A minor scale. Then we go up to A, and that's going to give us the octave. And then the rest of the notes on the G string is going to go 5, 7. Those are the fret numbers. And then on the B string, we're going to go 5, 8. And then on the high E string, we're going to go 5, 8. So the whole scale is... It's really easy because you always start out on the 5th fret and you either go to the 8th fret or the 7th fret. So as we saw, there was only 5 notes. You have the root note, you have the minor 3rd, you have the 4th, you have the 5th, and you have the minor 7th. And then it starts again on the octave. And that's your minor pentatonic. If we were going to do D minor pentatonic, we'd search for the D along the low E string, which is right here. And you do the same thing. Okay, so if your song is in a minor key like A minor, it's very easy to find the position. But what happens if your song is in a major key? Well, what you do is you just find the relative minor. And the way that you find the relative minor is you count 6 up from the key. So let's say we're playing in C major. Okay, so what we do to find the relative minor, which is going to give us our minor pentatonic, you just count 6 up from C. So C, D, E, F, G, A. So A is the relative minor. So if we're playing in C major, we want to be playing the A minor pentatonic. So let's try this again. So what happens if we're in D major? Well, the 6th note up in D is B. So we need to be playing B minor pentatonic if we're in the key of D major. So what happens if we're in G major? Okay, well, what's the 6th note up in the G major scale? E. So we need to be playing E minor pentatonic if we're in the key of G major. So how do we write guitar parts? Well, let's look at an example. Let's say our chord change is G, D, E minor, C. The first thing you're going to want to know is, well, what key is that? Well, the key is G. The next question is, what minor pentatonic should I be playing over that? And since we're in G major, we just learned we want to go to E minor pentatonic. So we're going to be playing E minor pentatonic over that G major chord progression. That's E minor pentatonic. The next thing is, which notes do we want to be playing? And so the thing that I like to do is just find notes that sound good over the chords. Okay, you can either do it technically and find specifically what notes are in the minor pentatonic that work over a G. For example, in G major we have G, B, and D. And so you could say, well, is there any G, B, or D in the E minor pentatonic? And we have a D in the E minor pentatonic. We also have a B, and we have a G. We have all 3 of those notes in the E minor pentatonic. And so you could play any single one of those. When the G is strumming, the next thing we want to do is, well, here we have a D. Are there any notes in the E minor pentatonic that work well over D? Well, we have a D. Okay, but we also know D major is D, F sharp, and A. Okay? Well, in E minor pentatonic we have an A and we have a D. And so either one of those notes would work when we play it over the D in the chord progression. Then we have an E minor. Okay? And so we know in E minor we have E, G, and B. And we have all of those notes in the E minor pentatonic. So any one of those, G, B, and E, would work when we're playing the E minor chord. And then finally we have a C. And a C is made up of C, E, and G. Okay, well in E minor pentatonic we don't have a C, but we do have an E and a G. So any one of those notes would work. And so when you're writing the part, you can either just do it by ear and just land on notes that sound good over the chord progression, or what you could do is find notes that you know work because they're notes within the particular chords that you're playing. So let's do something. So we know that the first one is G, and let's just land on a G. Okay? The next is going to be a D, so let's just land on a D. Then we're going to go to E, so let's just land on an E. And then finally we're going to go to C. Okay, but let's just stay on the E. So the three notes we're going to be doing is, so you could do something like this. See, so what I did is I just landed on each of the notes, G, D, and E, and then E again over the C, and I played just some little transition things in between. And so that's really it. The only thing is just keep in mind where your vocalist is singing. If my vocalist was singing within that octave range, I'd maybe write that same guitar part an octave up, or I'd write a different guitar part. It's very easy. You just find the minor pentatonic scale that you want to create your little guitar part over. You find the chord progression of your song, and you find notes in the minor pentatonic that sound good over the individual chords of the chord progression. And then maybe you add some transition little notes. So the biggest thing I want you to get out of this video is a production mindset. What guitar part is needed? If any guitar part is needed, and what type of guitar part is needed. What is the guitar part doing for my production? And then second, the minor pentatonic scale is everywhere. It's a great scale to know. The Led Zeppelin examples alone are ridiculous. AC/DC, these guys, Slash, they all use the minor pentatonic. And just even for simple guitar part writing, which is what I was showing you, it's very, very easy to come up with a great sounding guitar part. A very simple sounding guitar part that just supports the music. I hope you guys got a lot from this video. If you guys like the video, please like the video and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.